I love walking long distances on foot, but I can't because of my health condition. Mike on Patreon asks, Vlad, can you recommend a work of literature? There are so many great literature works in the history of at least the Western tradition that I know of, that I thought rather than going there, I wanted to recommend something humble that actually goes to the heart of my relationship with walking, but also my relationship with living a life with health limitations. The book I want to recommend is called Of Walking in Ice. It's just a series of stylized diary entries by the baby Werner Herzog. Werner must have been about 30 when he wrote this down. I want to tell you first about my health and my relationship with walking. And then second, I want to tell you a little bit about this extremely modest but unusual book. A lot of you know that I've got a neuroimmune health condition that leaves me with 3 to 4 hours a day to do different things. When I first got sick 19 years ago, I couldn't walk, couldn't do other things too, but I couldn't walk for a few years. And little by little, I began to walk a short amount and then a bit more and a bit more. But here's the problem. People with my condition, Myalgic Encephalomyelitis, have a cellular energy problem and other problems that mean that exercise unfortunately makes them worse. So here's what happens to me when I walk, and I love it. When I walk, with every sort of 20-30 steps, my IQ drops a bit, if you were to test me, and that testing has been done on me. And of course, your other symptoms just get much worse, from muscle pain to temperature control to various kind of feelings of weirdness and toxicity. Where I'm at now, really, is that I can walk quite a bit, but it's a special occasion for me to go on a prolonged walk. I would have to pick the right day for it, and my health would be in a good spot, and sometimes I might be unable to do that for weeks, sometimes even months. Depends where I'm at with it. And one of my favorite things in the world is to walk and talk. And that is something that I think is a bit difficult for me now to incorporate into my life. I do try it sometimes, but it's sort of 5-10 minutes in, even on a good day, I can feel the cognitive decline I experience when I'm talking and walking. So that just takes me to something else. I think it's really important, it's worth mentioning. It's been my experience for a long time, now less so because my life is fuller. It's fuller of work, of philosophy, of YouTube. And that's that people with ME, they dream and daydream about flying or swimming, floating in space, or running, or even walking a very long distance. They always have these dreams, especially when their mental health is good, right? And they're not depressed. They have these dreams about doing all of these extraordinary and free physical things. And I realized that sometimes you gotta spend money you don't have. And so from time to time, I go on a walk and I carry on walking and walking until I feel worse and worse and worse and worse. But there's something immensely pleasurable for me about this, about walking a considerable distance on foot, not just walking, 10 meters around the corner. So there, this is my relationship with walking, and I want to now tell you a bit about Werner Herzog's book Of Walking in Ice. So Werner Herzog is a very important and beautiful filmmaker who has made many fiction and non-fiction films, and you often can't tell the difference because his documentaries are so enormously stylized. But he's also written a couple of books, and this early book is a favorite of my coffee table. It's called Of Walking in Ice. And what happened is that Werner was in Munich. This is the early 1970s. And he heard that the German film historian Lotte Eisner was really sick and possibly dying. And in a typical baby Werner way, he'd do it now as well. He said, I'm walking from Munich to Paris on foot. It's going to take me 3 weeks. And I'm walking so that Lotte does not die. I forbid her to die. And if I walk from Paris to Munich, she will be alive. And so Werner walked for 3 weeks. I think it was cold, it was snowing. He stayed in very strange places. He broke into unoccupied houses sometimes to sleep over. And it's just a kind of boom, 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 feet on the ground diary of that walk. It has some Hemingwayan qualities, but I'm suspicious of Hemingway. And actually, Werner is cleaner in what he gives here. It's much less literarily sophisticated, but it's cleaner. There's something a little bit fakish about Hemingway. You know, there is the story of Picasso catching Hemingway at a bullfight, and Hemingway did not, Picasso was behind him. And at that particular bullfight, the salute that Hemingway was used to doing with his hand wasn't appropriate. And Hemingway picked up his hand, did the salute, and realized nobody else was doing it. Looked from right to left and subtly, sneakily put his hand down. And Picasso thought that'd be okay for virtually anybody to do, but Hemingway can't do that. That's a disqualifying thing. And I actually think something like that kind of self-conscious inauthenticity is to be found in Hemingway's writings. And Herzog is cleaner from that. I don't know Werner Herzog personally. I had a very brief chat with him about 10-15 years ago. And I said, you know, Werner, your literary books are a little underrated compared to your films because they're reviewed by film critics and they don't know how to evaluate them. And I mean that, that's true. In other words, these books are a little bit more magical and marvelous than they have been taken to be by a lot of film critics who read them and just couldn't figure out what was going on. And Werner said, 30 years after I am dead, no one will watch my films, but they will read, and they will read my books. And I don't know I completely agree with that. I think that Werner's best films do outmatch his writing. But this is nevertheless a very, very lovely thing. And what happened is that Werner got to Lotte Eisner. She didn't die. She made a recovery and she died several years later when Werner, as he puts it, gave her the permission to die. Let me read you the last paragraph of the book. As afterthought, just this. I went to Mademoiselle Eisner. She was still tired and marked by her illness. Someone must have told her on the phone that I had come on foot. I didn't want to mention it. I was embarrassed and placed my smarting legs up on a second armchair, which she pushed over to me. In the embarrassment, a thought passed through my head, and since the situation was strange anyway, I told it to her. Together, I said, we shall boil fire and stop fish. Then she looked at me and smiled very delicately, and since she knew that I was someone on foot and therefore unprotected, she understood me. For one splendid, fleeting moment, something mellow flowed through my deadly tired body. I said to her, open the window. From these last days onward, I can fly. There's one line in Hölderlin that Werner Herzog appreciates very much, and I just want to share it with you quickly. I think it's about how it's not a boat that undulates on the waves of a lake, but how a lake undulates on the waves of a boat.